In tears. Apache, mail-order bride. Trembled. You don't need to pretend with me, said the cowboy. Ezra Collins wiped sweat from his brow as the Arizona sun beat down on his back. 4 fence posts repaired. 3 more to go before sundown. The rhythm of work kept his mind empty, just the way he liked it. You work too hard, senor, Miguel called, leading 2 horses toward the corral. The Mexican ranch hand was the only one who'd stayed more than a month. Most couldn't stomach working for a man known as an Indian lover. Cattle won't keep themselves in, Ezra replied, driving another nail with unnecessary force. His shoulder ached, an old wound from his army days that never healed right. 8 years as a scout had taught him the language of the land and its original people. It had also taught him the cruelty men were capable of when following orders. The sound of approaching wheels drew his attention. Nobody came this far out unless they wanted something. Ezra squinted at the approaching stagecoach, dust billowing behind it like a storm cloud. You expecting visitors? Miguel asked, hand instinctively moving to his knife. No. Ezra grabbed his rifle from where it leaned against the fence post. Never am. The coach pulled to a hard stop. The driver, a weathered man with tobacco-stained teeth, climbed down and opened the door with a flourish. Special delivery for Ezra Collins, he announced, grinning. Courtesy of Captain James Harrington. Ezra's stomach knotted at his former commander's name. From the coach emerged a young woman in a tattered calico dress, her long black hair partially covered by a faded shawl. Her eyes were downcast, hands bound loosely at the wrists. Even from a distance, Ezra recognized the distinctive features of Apache heritage. The driver thrust an envelope toward Ezra. Captain says you've been alone too long. Figured an Injun bride might suit a man of your particular tastes. The woman flinched at his words. Ezra took the letter, breaking the seal with his thumb. Harrington's neat script explained he'd acquired this woman from a native bride service to help Ezra settle properly. This some kind of sick joke? Ezra demanded, anger rising in his throat. No joke, paid and delivered. The driver tossed a small bundle of belongings to the ground. Though if you don't want her, I know men who'd— That's enough. Ezra stepped forward, positioning himself between the driver and the woman. He noticed purple bruises circling her wrists. She stays. The driver shrugged, climbing back onto his seat. Your funeral. These savages'll slit your throat first chance they get. As the coach pulled away, the woman remained motionless, her eyes still fixed on the ground. When Ezra approached, she mechanically began to unbutton her dress. Stop, he said softly. He removed his bandana and gently wrapped it around her raw wrists. You don't need to pretend with me. No one's buying or selling anything here. For the first time, she looked up, dark eyes swimming with unshed tears. From the distant ridge, sunlight glinted off metal, binoculars, or a rifle scope. Ezra couldn't tell. Someone was watching. As he led the trembling woman toward his cabin, he felt the weight of a decision that would change everything. Ezra's cabin was sparse but clean, a single room with a stone fireplace, rough-hewn table, and narrow bed in the corner. The Apache woman stood motionless just inside the door, like a deer ready to bolt. You can sleep here, Ezra said, pulling a bedroll from a trunk and arranging it near the fire. I'll take the barn. Her eyes widened slightly. The first real reaction he'd seen. She watched him cautiously as he moved around the cabin, lighting a lamp as dusk gathered outside. Do you have a name? He asked. Setting water to boil. She hesitated, then touched her chest. Nahimana. The word was soft, almost lost in the crackle of the fire. Nahimana, he repeated, the syllables unfamiliar on his tongue. I'm Ezra. He offered her a tin cup of coffee. When their fingers brushed, she flinched, but didn't pull away. Steam rose between them in the growing darkness. Thirsty? He asked, gesturing to the cup. Bistone, she responded, then corrected herself. Thirsty. Yes. Ezra's eyebrows rose. You speak English? Little. She sipped the coffee, grimacing at its bitterness. He prepared a simple meal of beans and cornbread, setting a plate before her. She ate carefully, watching him over each bite. In the soft lamplight, Ezra noticed a small wooden carving on the shelf, an eagle he'd whittled years ago during his scouting days. Nahimana followed his gaze, recognition flickering across her face. Apache make, she said, pointing to the distinctive style. Learned from an old medicine man during the war. He touched his wounded shoulder unconsciously. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. You know my people. Some long time ago. Sleep came uneasily to both. From his bedroll, Ezra watched Nahimana examine the cabin's few possessions, his books, tools, the rifle propped by the door. She traced the eagle carving with gentle fingers, a piece of home in strange territory. Morning brought awkward discovery. Ezra woke to find Nahimana already up, his spare shirt hanging loose on her frame as she tended the fire with practiced ease. She'd found beans soaking in water overnight and was preparing breakfast outside. Ezra showed her the small garden where he grew vegetables. She bent down, examining the plants with knowing eyes. Wrong, she said, pointing to how he'd planted the corn. Should be with beans. Squash. She gestured to show 3 plants growing together. 3 sisters, Ezra said, remembering. The Apache way. A faint smile touched her lips, the first he'd seen, quickly replaced by alarm as she stared past him toward the horizon. Bad men, she said, pointing to a distant dust cloud. Come soon. Ezra squinted at the approaching riders. How do you know they're bad? Nahimana touched the fading bruises on her wrists. Same men, always find. Vernon Blackwood dismounted with the practiced ease of a man used to others watching. His cream-colored Stetson and tailored suit looked absurdly clean against the dusty landscape. 4 men flanked him, hands resting casually on their weapons. Collins? Blackwood called, his smile not reaching his eyes. Heard you got yourself some company. Ezra stepped forward, positioning himself between the visitors and his cabin where Nahimana remained inside. What brings you out this way, Blackwood? Neighborly concern? Blackwood removed his hat, wiping non-existent sweat from his brow. Terrible business with these Apache raids. 3 homesteads hit last week. Women taken. Livestock stolen. Haven't heard about any raids. Ezra replied evenly. No? Strange. Blackwood's gaze drifted to the cabin window where a shadow moved. Word is, you're harboring one of them. My business is my own. Blackwood's smile tightened. It becomes everyone's business when safety's concerned. That squaw in there, where'd she come from? Ezra's hand inched closer to his belt. She's not your concern. Everything in this territory is my concern. Blackwood stepped closer, lowering his voice. I've got friends in the governor's office who see things my way. This land of yours, water rights and all, I'm still willing to pay double what it's worth. Still not selling. Shame. Blackwood remounted his horse. Times being what they are, a white man living with an Apache, folks might get the wrong idea, especially with these raids. There haven't been any raids around here, Ezra said flatly. Read tomorrow's paper. Blackwood tipped his hat. Sheriffs forming a militia, safety of the territory, and all that. After they rode off, Ezra hitched the wagon for a trip to town. Nahimana insisted on coming, wrapping her hair beneath a shawl. Whispers followed them through Cedar Springs' single dusty street at the general store. Mrs. Potts refused to serve them until Ezra slapped double payment on the counter. Sheriff Jenkins cornered them as they loaded supplies. "You're playing a dangerous game, Collins," he said. Thumbs hooked in his belt. "Blackwood's got the governor's ear, says those Apache are sitting on land rich with gold." "Since when do you care what Blackwood wants?" "Since he started paying half the town's salaries." Jenkins glanced at Nahimana. "That one legal? Papers and such? She's not property." "Everything's property to someone." Jenkins spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Word of advice, don't make enemies you can't afford." Returning to the ranch at dusk, they found the north fence cut and cattle scattered across the hillside. As they rounded up strays, Ezra discovered boot prints near the broken fence. "These aren't Apache tracks," he said, examining the distinctive heel mark. "Someone wants it to look that way." Nahimana knelt beside him, her fingers tracing the imprint. "These men want me gone. Want you gone." "They won't get either," Ezra promised, realizing how quickly her safety had become tied to his own. Nahimana sat cross-legged before the fire, flames casting shadows across her face. Ezra had never seen her so still, so intensely present as she unfolded a small deerskin from her medicine pouch. "I am Nahimana," she began, her English stronger in the privacy of firelight. "Daughter of Nitika, medicine woman of Mountain Spirits Band. Not bride, never bride." Ezra sat opposite her, waiting. Soldiers came. Her fingers traced invisible patterns on the deerskin. 2 summers passed. Forced march to reservation. Many died, children, elders. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes held ancient grief. "My mother hid me in rocks, said return to sacred place when safe." She smoothed the deerskin, revealing a crude map drawn in ochre and charcoal. "I searched for my people. Men found me instead. White men who sell Apache women as brides. Servants." Her hand unconsciously touched the faded bruises on her wrists. "They hear I am medicine woman's daughter. No, I have knowledge of sacred places." "And these sacred places," Ezra ventured, "they're valuable?" "To my people, yes. To white men." She touched yellow markings on the map. "Gold?" "Much gold." Understanding dawned. "That's what Blackwood wants, not my water rights. The gold." Nahimana nodded. "Other women taken too. All who might know old places. But I was sent to you." Her dark eyes studied him. "Why you?" Ezra's gaze fell to his hands, calloused from years of hard work and harder memories. "I was a scout, 8 years with the army." The confession felt like ripping open an old wound. "I learned your language, your ways, helped soldiers find Apache camps." He expected hatred, but her expression remained unchanged. "Until White River Valley," he continued. "Orders came to attack a peaceful camp. Women, children. I refused." His hand moved unconsciously to his scarred shoulder. "Got this for my trouble. Discharged without honors." "You chose right path," she said simply. "Too late for those I helped hunt before." Silence stretched between them. broken only by popping embers. "Captain Harrington arranged this," Ezra realized aloud. "Sent you here knowing my history, knowing I wouldn't—" The door burst open. Miguel stumbled in, blood seeping through his shirt. "Patron," he gasped, collapsing against the table. "Blackwood's men. They took the women from the camp. They know she's here." Nahimana moved swiftly, pressing a cloth to Miguel's wound. "How many women?" Ezra demanded, reaching for his rifle. "4. All Apache, locked in Blackwood's old mine shack." Miguel winced as Nahimana applied pressure. "They plan to make them talk. Find the gold." "When?" "Tomorrow, after the sheriff forms his militia." Miguel's eyes found Nahimana. "They said to bring the medicine woman's daughter, or they start killing." Ezra met Nahimana's gaze across Miguel's wounded body. In her eyes, he saw not fear, but resolve, and something more, something that made his next words inevitable. "Then we'd better get there first." Dawn found them preparing by the corral. Ezra cleaned his Winchester repeater while Nahimana sorted herbs and powders from her medicine pouch. "You ever fired one of these?" Ezra asked, holding out his Colt revolver. Nahimana shook her head, her hand small around the weapon's grip. "Finger here," he guided, standing behind her. "Breathe out when you squeeze." She aimed at an empty can on the fence post, the explosion making her flinch. The can remained untouched. "Again," Ezra said, slower this time. By the 6th shot, the can flew from the post. "Good," he nodded, "though I hope you won't need it." While Miguel rested inside, they devised their plan. Blackwood's mine shack stood in a gulch 3 miles west, remote enough for secrecy, close enough to reach by nightfall. "I know these hills," Nahimana said, sketching paths in the dirt with a stick. "Apache trails here. Here. No white man knows." "They'll have guards," Ezra cautioned. She smiled faintly. "Apache woman invisible when she wishes." As sunset approached, Nahimana disappeared into the cabin, emerging with her hair freshly braided, face painted with subtle ochre markings. "For protection," she explained, touching the lines beneath her eyes. She approached Ezra, where he checked their horses, reaching for his wounded shoulder. Her touch was gentle but sure, applying a pungent salve from her pouch. "For strength," she murmured, her face inches from his. Ezra's breath caught. The scent of sage and pine enveloped him as her fingers worked the medicine into old scar tissue. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition of a bond forged in shared danger. "Nahimana," he said softly, her name no longer foreign on his tongue. She silenced him with a gentle touch to his lips. Taking a thin strip of woven horsehair from her wrist, she wrapped it around his left hand, then joined it with her own. "Apache way," she explained. "Bind fate together, face danger as one." The intimacy of the gesture overwhelmed him. Without thinking, Ezra leaned forward, brushing his lips against hers. She stiffened momentarily, then yielded, her hand rising to his face. The moment broke at the sound of approaching hooves. They separated swiftly, Ezra reaching for his rifle, Sheriff Jenkins dismounted, flanked by 2 deputies. In his hand, a paper fluttered in the evening breeze. "Ezra Collins," he announced, his voice carrying official weight. "I have a warrant signed by the territorial judge." "What for?" Ezra demanded, though he already knew. "Vernon Blackwood says you're harboring stolen property." Jenkins's eyes shifted to Nahimana. "That Apache woman belongs to him, purchased legal and proper from the Indian agent." "She's not property," Ezra said, stepping forward, "and she's not going anywhere." Jenkins sighed, as though genuinely regretful. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Collins, Blackwood's formed a citizens' committee for territorial safety, 20 armed men ready to rid the territory of the Apache threat. He patted the warrant. This is just a courtesy call. We'll be back at dawn, with company. As the lawmen rode away, Ezra turned to Nahimana, decision crystallizing between them. We move tonight, he said. She nodded, already gathering their supplies. Moonlight silvered the landscape as Ezra and Nahimana approached Blackwood's mine shack from the ridge above. Below, 2 guards played cards by lantern light, rifles propped against the weathered walls. 4 women inside, Nahimana whispered, pointing to the small barred window. I hear them. Ezra surveyed the clearing. We need a distraction. Nahimana slipped away before he could protest, moving, like a shadow, along the rocky ground. Minutes later, a haunting cry echoed from the opposite ridge, perfect mimicry of a mountain lion. Both guards stood, peering nervously into darkness. A second cry, closer, sent one guard hurrying toward the sound, rifle ready. The remaining guard never saw Ezra coming, a quick blow with his rifle butt, and the man crumpled silently. Inside, they found 4 women huddled together on the dirt floor. Recognition flashed in their eyes at the sight of Nahimana. Whispered Apache words passed between them as Ezra worked on the door chain. Hurry, Nahimana urged, helping the weakest woman to her feet. Man will return soon. They were halfway up the ridge when a shout erupted behind them. Gunfire split the night, bullets spitting dust at their heels. Keep going, Ezra ordered, turning to provide covering fire. I'll hold them off. The ridge provided momentary safety, but dawn would bring nowhere to hide. By unspoken agreement, they headed for Ezra's ranch, reaching it as first light crested the eastern mountains. Miguel met them at the door, his wound bandaged, but his face grim. Riders coming, many riders. Through his spyglass, Ezra counted 20 men approaching from town, Blackwood's militia. To the north, dust clouds signaled more horsemen. We're surrounded, he muttered. Nahimana organized the rescued women, distributing Ezra's sparse weapons. We fight, she said simply. The first attack came from the south, 6 riders charging the fence line. Ezra's rifle dropped 2 before they reached the yard. Nahimana and the women drove the others back with surprisingly accurate fire. They'll try burning us out next, Ezra predicted. Reloading. Sure enough, flaming arrows arced toward the barn roof. Miguel and 2 women raced to extinguish the flames while Ezra provided cover. The battle stretched through morning. Whenever Blackwood's men advanced, they met fierce resistance. During brief lulls, Nahimana gathered specific herbs from Ezra's garden, tucking them into her pouch. Near noon, Blackwood himself approached under white flag. Last chance, Collins, he called. Send out the Apache women, and you might walk away from this. That's not happening, Ezra shouted back. Blackwood's smile turned predatory. Then we burn everything. The next charge came from all sides. Smoke and gunfire filled the air as the cabin's roof caught fire, fighting their way to the well. They formed a bucket line while continuing to hold off attackers. In the chaos, Ezra lost sight of Nahimana. A rifle shot grazed his arm as he searched desperately. He found her in Blackwood's grip, a knife at her throat. Surrender now, Blackwood demanded, or she dies first. Time slowed. Ezra saw Nahimana's eyes, not pleading, but calculating. Her fingers moved slightly against her dress, where he knew she carried a small blade. drawing on everything she had taught him about Apache movement. Ezra feinted left, then dropped low, firing in one fluid motion. His bullet struck Blackwood's shoulder just as Nahimana drove her knife into his thigh. Blackwood fell, howling. But as Ezra reached for Nahimana, searing pain exploded in his chest. One of Blackwood's men had found his mark. "Get them to safety," Ezra gasped, falling to his knees. Blood spread across his shirt. "Don't look back." The last thing he saw was Nahimana's face above him, fierce and determined, before darkness claimed him. Pain was Ezra's first sensation, sharp, then dull, then sharp again. Light filtered through his eyelids, red and pulsing. Voices drifted around him, unfamiliar words in familiar cadence, Apache voices. His eyes opened to a structure he didn't recognize, a wickiup of bent branches covered with hides. Smoke rose through a central opening, carrying the scent of medicinal herbs. "He wakes," someone said in Apache. Nahimana's face appeared above him, her features tight with exhaustion, but her eyes bright. "You return," she said softly in English. "Where?" His voice cracked. "Safe place. My people's camp." Memory flooded back. The siege. Blackwood. The bullet. His hand moved to his chest, finding bandages wrapped tightly around his torso. "How long?" 4 days. She offered water from a clay cup. "You fight hard. Spirit strong." Outside, he heard children's laughter, dogs barking, normal sounds of a living community that seemed impossible after the violence they'd escaped. The others? Safe. Miguel brings news. And Blackwood arrested. Captain Harrington came with soldiers, real soldiers, not Blackwood's men. Found papers showing Blackwood steal from government, take Apache land without treaty. Ezra tried to sit up, wincing. "And you? Your people accept you back?" Something flickered across her face, pride mixed with sadness. "I am not same. They are not same. Too much change." She touched the horsehair still bound around her wrist. "But we make new way." Days passed. Ezra's strength returned slowly under Nahimana's care. He learned the hidden camp housed just 30 Apache, survivors who had escaped the reservations, clinging to traditional ways while adapting to a changing world. When he could walk again, a messenger arrived from town. Captain Harrington himself had come to Cedar Springs, bringing territorial investigators. Blackwood faced charges of corruption, fraud, and murder. "What happens now?" Ezra asked as they sat together, watching sunset paint the distant mountains. Nahimana's hand found his. "We choose, 6 months later." Ezra stood on the porch of his rebuilt ranch house. Behind him, new buildings formed a small settlement, part ranch, part trading post, part refuge. Apache families lived alongside Mexican workers and even a few white settlers who had rejected the prejudice of the towns. Captain Harrington had arranged for official recognition of their land claims, combining Ezra's legal rights with the Apache historical territory. Here, Nahimana practiced traditional medicine while Ezra handled business with the outside world. They had created something unique, a place between worlds. Nahimana joined him on the porch, watching the mixed community gather for the harvest celebration. Tears glistened in her eyes, catching the golden light. "Why tears?" Ezra asked gently. She turned to him, a smile transforming her face. "These are not tears of fear. These are tears because for first time, no pretending, for anyone." Ezra took her hand. The horsehair binding, now replaced with a silver band that incorporated both Apache designs and Western craftsmanship. "Shunjo," he said in her language. his pronunciation careful and practiced. "I am happy with you." As the sun set behind them, Ezra realized that in saving Nahimana, he had finally saved himself. The wounds of his past had healed, leaving scars that marked not pain, but growth. Together, they had found strength not in isolation, but in the courage to open their hearts, even when it meant risking everything,